Hey guys, so today we're going to paint this white rose and we're going to use just 3 colors, black, yellow, and white. And we're going to first start out by making an egg shape. Mix your lemon yellow with a little bit of white and a little bit of ivory black. And that makes kind of a lime green yellow. And that part is going to peek through as we build up our layers. Here I am just picking out the basic shapes of these petals, kind of following the outline, trying to get that initial placement, and we're going to continue to build up these layers. I wanted you to know that you can really use any black or any yellow. It doesn't have to be lemon yellow. I'm using lemon yellow because it can go very light, but when you add the black to it, it can also become very dark. But really any kind of yellow would work for this. Now we're moving on to the bottle shape while we're letting the rose dry, and we're just getting a basic rectangle shape that's kind of turned at an angle. It's gonna go back into space like a cube. So we're just picking out that basic shape here. I just mixed up a gray color with the white and the black to do this outline of the bottle. So I have mixed up a different ratio of yellow and black. So as you can see, if you mix black into the yellow, it makes a dark green. Depending on how much your ratio is, if you add more black to your yellow, it's going to make a darker green. And we are just suggesting leaf shapes within this bottle, and we're just making it really painterly and loose, not trying to make everything exact. So ivory black, it leans towards the blue cooler side, and that's why I chose this shade of black. So it makes a very nice green when you mix it with yellow. And I wanted to get different variations of green, so I went back into my black and added more black to the yellow to make an even darker green. Now I'm adding a little bit of white to that mixture to make a third shade of green within these leaves. I'm really not even looking at my reference photo at this point. I am simply painting these leaves intuitively. I know that these leaves are crumpled within this glass bottle, and just trying to suggest leaf shapes with highlights and shadows. And it's a lot more fun trying to paint this way than trying to be so exact with everything. So now I am taking a gray mixture, the white and the black, and just outlining the basic shapes of these petals, everything that will be in shadow. Again, not being super exact with the brushwork here or the drawing, because we are drawing with our paintbrush pretty much, but just putting in these basic shapes. And at this point, these shadow colors are a little harsh, so we will go back later and soften up these colors and make the transitions better. This just helps you to see where all of the lines are in this a little bit better. So these marks are basically kind of placeholders. So I've heard rose shapes described as teacups and saucers. So you basically have a little bowl at the bottom or a saucer, and in the center you have this mass of petals that are more tightly woven together like a teacup. The petals sort of spiral around each other, and depending on how old your rose is, they might be really tightly woven at the center, or as they sit for several days, the rose petals will start to open and come out towards the sides. So now I'm going to go back into this rose and pick out some of the highlights. So you'll want to take your yellow and white mixture and just add a little bit more white to the ratio. So this rose is tinted kind of a yellowish green, has a lot of yellowish green undertones, and the goal of having this brighter yellow green color underneath is allowing some of these undertones to show through in the end result, and hopefully it will look closer to our reference photo. You can see in the reference photo that there is a lot of yellowish green color peeking through in places in the crevices. One of the nice things about the acrylic paint is most of the paints are pretty transparent, so you can get a little bit of that glow that shows through in your final painting. If you're ever having a difficult time getting your paints to do what you want them to do, sometimes you might want to speed up the drying process with a blow dryer as well. And you can also add water to thin your paints, or you can use an acrylic paint thinning medium. So here I'm allowing a lot of my brush strokes to be very soft and cover up some of those really harsh gray crevice shadows. And we don't want our acrylic rose to look too stiff or plasticky. And the look I'm going for is more akin to oil paints. But I like acrylic paints because they dry a lot faster. So now I'm trying to integrate those shadow colors more with a lighter mixture of gray and just soften all of these edges, making a lot softer effect. Acrylics are harder to blend than oils, but I do not want my rose to look so stiff and like it has cut out petals, so we're just going around and trying to soften all of the edges now that we know the basic shapes of this rose, and I like the look of this a lot better. At this point, you can take your white and pick out more of your highlights, and the key is to just keep building up those acrylic layers and making small adjustments here and there until you get it how you want it. Here's a good point to go ahead and take your background gray, your black mixed with white, and cut around all the edges so you can start to see your rose a little bit better. Also, I think that adding the background color and cutting around everything later makes the rose look more integrated into the background and not so cut out. It's kind of a push-pull between integrating the background into the rose, so you'll see me cutting around everything with this gray background color, but then also layering into that background color with my rose and my bottle. It just makes everything look a little bit more integrated. It's kind of the same concept if you're painting a tree and you want to cut around the leaves of your treetop with the sky color. It looks a lot more integrated. So now I'm just going back into these petals and making them kind of turn over a little bit more on the tips here. The best way to paint a glass bottle is just to paint what shows through in the background. So I'm just bringing that wall color in through the see-through parts. If you lose the shape of your rose, you can just go back in and cut around everything. That's the really nice thing about acrylics. They're really easy to paint over if you mess up. But as Bob Ross says, there are no mistakes, only happy accidents. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed the video and you learned a little something about how to paint a rose. If you want to see more content like this, please head over to my channel. And I hope you like the rainbows on my countertop.